what is the prevalence of revenue sharing? Are you actually noticing
Yeah,
that?
yeah, yeah.
I find that quite
I mentioned it.
interesting.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
mentioned it. It's like, that's interesting. Not surprising. I would have expected. But how prevalent are you seeing that? And is it growing slowly, or is it something
Well,
that's really quite new?
that most sophisticated malnourishers are offering both. They're offering a higher price point.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're offering a lower price point.
Standard business.
So it's literally a business. Like this is not activists. Yeah, they've been businesses, but they're really achieving a level of sophistication these days that's it's unbelievable. They're coordinating, they're working as teams, developing techniques, sharing techniques, revenue sharing models. It's we're seeing it, I'd say, in almost every case where we see a sophisticated malware family and author. If they're offering, if the author is building a build, they're almost all of them are offering a revenue sharing model.
And I'm guessing almost all of those ones are also the ones that have distribution network that aren't directly fronting. Which means that they've got that defense and methodology. They're not being directly exposed.
Exactly. Yeah, these guys are really it's slick. So we have a whole team of about 100 people who spend their day focused on the space, the mutation, the malware, the techniques being employed, and adjusting our defense techniques to get better attacks on them. Yeah, about 100 people on the daily using information about 100 million endpoints that are connected to it. Pleasure. Yeah.
Thank you.
I like the pants.
Cheers. Thanks.
Tell him you've got a tough match.
Oh, yeah, I do have a tough match.
They remind me of like
Funny seeing it.
Back in the day.
yeah, great pants. Is this yours? No, that's mine.
I've got cards I can give you. I've got I can show them where to close to the time. Do you guys want to take questions for that, or just go to the end? As Connie's reminding me, I do have stuff now. Do you? Yeah, I thought I better not wear it to some training session. No, I've got it with me. I thought it was not. It's just a whole other just like thing. You could confront it. pressing front back all the time. Only do that when I press the clients or go to clients that are very reserved or pretty oh well, a couple of minutes. Oh man, that light is bright.
What time is lunch?
12:40. Yeah, sorry, 12:20.
12:20. And then lunch?
Yeah. So anytime you have questions, hope everyone gets lunch. Feel free to look at it.
Come down in the middle.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second session in the streams at the first day of AusCERT 2017. For the next session, we have Brian Spring and Marilyn Nelson talking about their implementation of ServiceNow from nothing to fully implemented in 6 weeks with AMP in their Security Operations Centre. Just before we start, just usual reminders, make sure your mobile phone's on silent and don't forget to use the app to rate the sessions. Anyway, could everybody please welcome Marilyn and Brian?
Good morning. How are you going? So my name is Brian Spring. This is Marilyn Nelson.
Hello.
And we're going to take you through the 6-week journey in terms of what AMP was able to be, or what we were able to deliver as partners for AMP to deliver security operations, specifically around security incident response and also vulnerability response. Okay, so let's kick it off. So there's going to be a couple of topics that we're going to talk about, give introductions. We'll go through some of the challenges with respect to security response, and then also talk about some customer results, and also specifically around AMP, and we'll talk about a few different key takeaways. But first, we just want to kind of give a little introduction into who we are.
Thank you. So I'm Marilyn Nelson, over in Australia from the United States, based out of Texas originally, and I have been doing cybersecurity and security incidents for quite some time. I spent quite a few years in the military doing black operations, which are operations that don't really exist, where we use cybersecurity. Everyone always asks out of that, why are you doing security operations on a ServiceNow platform now for organizations around the globe is because on 9/11 I was in the Pentagon and I walked out of a briefing with my entire staff, at which time the planes hit direct impact and I lost my 12 people and I never went back to the Pentagon. But cybersecurity plays a really big important role in life, not only for people, individuals, but also for major organizations. And so it is very, very important to be able to tell and understand in advance what the bad guys are doing. And I think that's the key thing of where the KPMG risk consulting, as well as on the ServiceNow platform, the security operations implementation or operations within ServiceNow comes into play.
Great, thank you. Here's a little bit about KPMG.
KPMG, we're one of the major consulting firms, one of the big four. We do everything, all of the, from risk consulting, management consulting, strategies, and obviously tax, as you all may know. But I don't want to spend a lot of time on KPMG. I just have the honor of working for them.
Great, thank you. And so my name is Brian Spring, and I'm with ServiceNow. I've been with ServiceNow for almost a year now. 20 plus years experience in IT. And just to let you guys know, I've come from traditional IT vendors where there's a lot of different individual pieces of the puzzle to put solutions together. But the reason why I joined ServiceNow is a couple of reasons. Number one, it has a platform so that multiple different types of capabilities can actually be deployed throughout an organization. But most important, it's not about putting the pieces of the puzzle together. And ServiceNow has a great platform currently that a lot of people already may know about for IT service management and HR. But in the last 12 months, actually 14 months, what we've done is that we've actually created a security incident response and a vulnerability response platform for the security folks because of the 12 plus years experience that we've had in IT service management. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. One of the first things, one of the first conferences that I've been to was, as a ServiceNow representative, a lot of people ask me, ServiceNow, what are you guys doing at security conferences? And so my answer to the question is fairly simple. We've been in response or service automation for 12, 13 years, workflow, automation, collaboration, notification, et cetera, and also case management. And we actually own the market from an IT service management perspective. What we're doing now is that we're branching out into other businesses. So for example, we're branching out into IT business management, IT operations management, security operations, HR, customer service management. And it's because of the core platform and its capabilities, it's basically taking off like wildfire. All right? So ServiceNow globally, about 4,000 plus customers, mostly on the IT service management. Just within the last year, we picked up over 200 customers for security operations, specifically around security incident response and also vulnerability response. We're going to talk a little bit about that right now.
So a couple of the key things that we want you to be able to understand today is what is the ServiceNow platform and how can it help you with your security incident response, your threat intelligence, and also your vulnerability response. Using a unified platform that you may already have implemented in your organization, or if you haven't implemented it in your organization, how you could use the ServiceNow platform as an entryway into really getting an insight into how you can early detect, you can early respond, and you can understand what threats are coming into your organization and take action on those in a more expeditious manner instead of the 3-month time frame from detection to mitigation, which is normally what we're seeing. We actually, on the AMP case study, a little teaser will show you how we took that 3 months and reduced it absolutely significantly down to where they feel like they are able to respond in a manner which is saving not only resource, time, and energy, but also threats and vulnerabilities from inside their organization.
Great, thank you. So ServiceNow, with respect to enterprise security response, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the challenges, which you guys probably, if not, you already know what the challenges are, but I'm going to recap that because what that's going to do is help me to actually explain to you exactly what we do, all right? So first thing, why is there a system of action needed to address response? So first thing, before I even go even further, let me kind of position where we are in the market because I think that'll help set the scene, right? First of all, we're not a firewall. We're not in the protection space. We're not in the detection space. We're not in IDS, IPS, vulnerability scanner, and all those capabilities. We're not a SIM, all right? So we don't do any of the SIM work, right? So what has been missing, truly, over the last X number of years? Response. So we fit perfectly into this capability because we've been doing it for 12, 13 years, or 12 to 15, 14, 15 years, whatever it may be. And it's based on building out a platform to allow organizations to leverage workflow, automation, collaboration, mobility, et cetera, et cetera. It's a fantastic platform. Can I just ask how many people in here actually, their organizations or agencies use ServiceNow? Right. Fantastic. So one of the things I will stress to you, if you're going down the path that the security folks are going down the path to actually remediate incidents, security incidents, and also vulnerabilities, and if you're trying to do that within the core ServiceNow platform, I would really ask you to stop. Because what we've done is we've actually scoped an application specifically for the SOC and also for the vulnerability response teams. Okay? There's specific security around it, methodologies, and et cetera, so that you can actually take what you have with respect to the existing security tools and integrate those directly into the security operations platform. So I would just ask that if afterwards, if you want to have a conversation, I'd love to have a conversation with you and understand what you're currently doing. Okay? So again, we are response. So basically, the standard understanding goes something like this. You guys everybody has a lot of tools, right? What do you do when there's something that happens? What do you do when something goes wrong? All right? Also, with respect to the majority of breaches, where they usually come from, vulnerabilities. And this is why we targeted three specific areas, which is security incident response, vulnerability response, and then leveraging the threat and intelligence capabilities of certain types of feeds. So core problem number one that organizations and agencies are facing. You guys are probably feeling this, right? Just a ton of stuff just coming at you, right? IDS, IPS, vulnerability data, and if there's a problem, it's pretty hard to actually sort through that stuff, right? Second core problem, and I've been in many, many SOCs. If there's an incident or something going on, what's happening? Running something, run something, run something, put the pieces of the puzzle together, try to figure out exactly what the hell happened, and actually report on that stuff. That's what's actually going on, right? So there's all these processes that actually have to take place. But the problem is that, well, maybe it's not being tracked correctly, right? And it's actually, in some cases, it's in people's head. So core problem number three that we're seeing is this. Well, you got the security folks, you got the IT folks, HR, IT support. Everyone's communicating via phone, text, email, all that stuff, right? The problem is, how do you actually collaborate? How do you track? How do you actually manage exactly what you're doing? By the way, how do you learn from it so that next time when it happens, you actually already have a solution to deal with it? So this is the core value proposition of ServiceNow because we've been doing it for so long. So really the conclusion is this, and by the way, we've been working with IT for quite some time. IT is a little bit ahead of the game. They have incident, problem, change, configuration management processes in place. They leverage ITIL, et cetera. We're just trying to help out the security folks. That's all we're really trying to do, leveraging the capabilities that we have and actually bringing on some really, really smart people that actually create applications for the SOC, for people to do vulnerability response and leverage that level of information. So this is the core problem. And it's not the same problem or it is basically the same problem that the IT folks have been facing years ago and actually currently. So this is the key ingredient, guys. The key ingredient is really this. You know, people talk about posture and all that, right? Posture, from our perspective, is not necessarily number of incidents, vulnerabilities, endpoint, what's actually happening in terms of like the threat from a specific location. It's all about the business service. So you should be focusing on exactly what matters. What are the critical business services and the incidents and the vulnerabilities that are associated with it? That's your prioritization. That's what the CISOs and also the board want to know about. That's what risk is. Okay? So we address that, and the reason why we address it is because ServiceNow, its platform, has a built-in CMDB. We already know what's happening. We already know the business services. We already know the application structure or the infrastructure that's associated with the business services. It's as easy as that. So if I know that there are certain business services and there's certain components that make up those business services, and there's a vulnerability or security incident or whatever it may be against it, I know that I can prioritize it and I know what will potentially be impacted. So how ServiceNow helps to resolve. It's a fairly simple process. First one, we integrate the security products. So we usually sit down, and I usually have a conversation with, the CISO or the head of SecOps or the vulnerability folks, and I'm like, hey, what are you guys doing right now? That's basically my first question. What are you doing now? And so what we do is that we understand what the current processes are, and we want to automate those processes. It's step one, automation of those processes, right? And out of the box with our platform, we have a number of different workflows. We have a number of different integrations, specifically 40 integrations with the Tenables, the Qualis, the Splunks, CrowdStrike, all these guys, right? So the top 40 that are out there, we already integrate into the platform. So the first thing is integrate the security products. Step number 2, automatically prioritize the security incidents and vulnerabilities, and that's what we were just talking about. So once I integrate the security products and I have incidents coming in, I can also start to prioritize whether it's a good CMDB, because a lot of organizations have, excuse my language, but shitty ones, right? Or what you do is you leverage IT asset libraries, et cetera. But we would love for organizations to leverage the current investment of the CMDB that they've already paid for, okay? So automatically prioritize security, incidents, and vulnerabilities. Next step, automate the investigation. So when a security incident comes in, let's say from a Splunk or an event or an alert that turns into a security incident, we kick off workflow. And that workflow actually goes through a series of different individual steps so that the responder doesn't have to do all those individual steps themselves. By the time that they get to that incident, there's already a workflow that's kicked off, pulling in information from third-party vendors, whether it's PA or Palo Alto or whoever it may be, and we're actually enriching the hell out of the incident right now so that by the time the responder gets there, they actually have all this information at their fingertips and they can make a decision. So they're not doing the manual and the menial tasks that they've been doing or you guys have been doing currently. So automatically prioritize security incidents and vulnerabilities, automate investigation, and then what do? We determine the response action. This is where the human intervention comes in, and we actually do some sort of interaction or response. Now, it could be manual or it can be automated. Now, with the whole false positive thing, a lot of organizations they want to put the brakes on, right? So we can actually provide it as a manual task as a part of the workflow. Next step, it's around orchestrating the remediation. So, for example, let's say you have a vulnerability, and that vulnerability let's say you get a scan. Let's just talk about this. Let's say you get a vulnerability scan back from like Qualys, Tenable, NVDB, whatever it may be, right? And what you want to do is that you want to take that scan data, ingest it into ServiceNow. We start parsing it, and based on the priority of the vulnerabilities, based on business services and things like that, what it'll do is it'll go out there, match up the IP address in business service, and with whoever owns it. And then it'll send an email automatically to the person and to ask, hey, can we run a patch? Response comes back. Okay, we can run a patch, execute or orchestrate a patch, manual or automated, however you want to do it. The patch executes because somebody in IT did it manually or it was automated, comes back. We do a rescan automatically, and it comes back that the vulnerability is gone. Our customers, with respect to WannaCry, there really weren't any issues because it was already, first of all, they were already protected, the majority of them. The second thing is that when it did come out and when it was understood that this is actually what's happening, it was an easy fix of, let's look at all the vulnerabilities, create a group. Once we understand what these vulnerabilities are in this group, what are the IP addresses, execute the patch, we're done. Okay? And then Marilyn's going to talk a little bit about that as well, because what AMP have done, they went from 12 weeks of going through that whole process I just explained down to a week, and they're going to get it down to a day. Okay. Final step, this is the best one, PIR. It takes organizations, agencies, weeks to actually put together a PIR because of all the interactions within the platform, the workflows, the steps, and the handoff of one thing or one portion of the incident or vulnerability to somebody else, et cetera. Every single interaction is captured. That means that at the end, when you have to actually close it out, the PIR is already created. But if you actually want to get feedback from everybody who was on that team, guess what happens? We can automatically generate a survey to all the people who are on the response with specific questions directed towards them. We get that information back and we make it a part of the PIR. Even further, when it is closed out, that PIR, what we'll do is we'll create a knowledge base article, and it'll be a core part of the platform. So the next time an incident like this comes up, you reference the knowledge article, and by the way, it has all that information in there. So, you guys are familiar with Pondman? 271 days, identifying container breach. I'm sure you guys are hearing about this all the time. What we did is that we actually surveyed our 200 customers. And we figure it's so 200. Everyone knows it's ridiculous, right? 201 days, but that's what they say. 201 days. Industry average 4,824 hours. You know how many hours it takes for our customers to identify? 29 hours. 70 days to contain. 1,680 hours. 33 hours. This is from our customers. And the reason is it's pure and simple. Because we do what do we do really well? We automate. We assign tasks. We manage those tasks. We integrate with the existing platforms that an organization is invested in. And so we've come up with some fantastic results. 160 times improvement, 50x improvement. Just cut that. Okay, let's forget the Pounding numbers. Let's just cut that in half. Cut it in a quarter. It's value. I mean, what we're doing with customers right now is valuable, right? So, for example, this is a slide that AMP and also KPMG put together. 3 things I want you to focus on this slide. First one, 6 weeks to implement vulnerability response and security incident response and also threat intelligence. Number 2, see that 60%? 60% reduction in vulnerability response time. 60% reduction. Right below it, 30% reduction in security incident response time. This is a pretty large organization here in Australia. They're leveraging it and getting a ton of value. With that, I'm going to pass it over to Marilyn. She's going to talk about how.
Yeah. So Brian, great job on setting up what this ServiceNow security operations application within the ServiceNow platform can really do for organizations. But let's take that the next step and look at some practical application. It's great to hear about what the platform can do, but this is what we, with AMP, KPMG, and ServiceNow, it was the perfect trifecta coming together to really get these results. So really, what drove AMP to this, to wanting to put in ServiceNow? KPMG had just implemented their incident, problem change, CMDB, service catalog, service request fulfillment on the ServiceNow platform. So the head of cybersecurity came to the KPMG team and said, "We hear that there's a security operations component of ServiceNow. Can you talk to us a little bit about it and tell us how we can leverage what you've already done? We already know the CMDB is there. We already know that we have incident management. So how can we use the platform to extend the capability and really use what's already been built?" So when KPMG was implementing the CMDB for AMP, what we did is, knowing kind of the roadmap, because we had helped them with their strategy as well, knowing what their roadmap was around the GRC, around security operations, around some IT finance transformations that they were wanting to do, all on the ServiceNow platform. When we built the CMDB, we put a couple of components in so that they were already light years ahead of where maybe other organizations are in their CMDB. We put the business criticality on each of their applications. We also, the underlying support systems, the servers that supported those business critical applications, we put business criticality on there. And what that did was that allowed us to come in, and when we did security operations now, is to put qualifiers on. When a security incident came in, or a threat was identified or detected, or a vulnerability was exposed through FireEye or some of their other scanning systems, it ingested into ServiceNow platform, and they could absolutely determine from all of the noise, as Brian said, what they needed to respond to quickly, and then that kicked off major incident or the security incident response from that perspective. So really what we did is we wanted to look at helping IMP understand how to prevent security incidents from within their organization. They're a large financial services organization. They have a banking component as well here in Australia, so they didn't want to be a target. Obviously, they are a target. So the first thing was helping them to prevent. Also, they wanted to be able to improve how they were tracking security incidents, how they were closing them out, how they were responding, going from months to weeks to hours was the key objective. Also detecting, identifying those security incidents, understanding what the threats were that were coming in, bombarding, as you can imagine, as all of you are experiencing the threats and the vulnerabilities that are coming in and exposing your organization to a cybersecurity attack. And then, as Brian said, using the ServiceNow platform to be able to respond to these in an expeditious manner so that they could identify and prevent, mitigate, or eliminate those responses, those security incident responses. All right. So really, what we did is we looked at their current process. We looked at the current ways of working, if you will, and we determined that there were some gaps in there. These were the quick wins. These were what was going to take AMP from 0 to fully operational in the 6 weeks. By understanding what those gaps were, understanding where the improvements could be made, and really targeting those specific areas while giving them the whole entire capability on the ServiceNow platform. Also, roles and responsibilities. What was IT doing? What was the CMDB already doing? How could they leverage what was in the CMDB? And then who was doing that? Who had access to security incidents? Who was mitigating them? How were they communicating back to IT from when a change needed to be implemented to implement that patch, or to shut down a server if there was a vulnerability or a threat that was discovered on that? The tooling and automation, there was absolutely zero automation at AMP with how they responded to security incidents prior to going live on the ServiceNow platform. And then also the service level gaps. Months, as we said, down to weeks, those service levels, AMP felt that those were not actually viable service levels, months to mitigate a risk, and that was actually putting AMP at a risk. Obviously, as most of you all are, if you're taking months to respond to security incidents. What was the role of ServiceNow in this? So the automation part, putting in the workflow that comes out of the box with the ServiceNow application and platform, hooking together the IT incident response along with the security incident response. So if there was an incident that happens or a security incident that happens, it automatically creates a ServiceNow security incidents. There's linkage between IT and security operations can now communicate. It also linked into the change management application where it could automatically generate a request for change to put in that patch to mitigate that risk. So automation is the key. And also visibility into what is going on. When you're working in spreadsheets and emails and texts and phone calls, you don't really have that visibility, and ServiceNow provided AMP with that visibility. So how did we do it in 6 weeks, right? It seems a little bit crazy. We had a kickoff on week 1. We did the system design. So what does that mean? That's when we did that process gap analysis. We looked at their service level agreements. We looked at how they were operating, what were their key priorities. And so we did workshops to design out what the system needed to do. So that then set the stage for how do we determine success? Then we went right into the configuration of security incident response, vulnerability response, and we also did threat intelligence in there as well. We had an integration to FireEye and Nessus. So FireEye, we ingested the information, the threats and vulnerabilities that were coming in from FireEye, and then also Nessus with the known vulnerabilities that are coming in. So that integration took us from about week 3 to week 5. People say, well, you must have skipped testing to do it in 6 weeks. Absolutely not. I'm a pretty big process freak. So SDLC, back in the old day, you know, the way of working, we still did testing. We did about a week and a half of testing. It was a very small team, so we were able to execute testing within this time frame. And then at the end of the 6 weeks, we implemented, we were live, and we actually were able to, those results that Brian showed just a few minutes ago, during the hypercare week is when we started to get the analysis and really understand the impact of what we had done over these last 6 weeks had on AMP as an organization.
Yeah, one thing I'd like to add to this as well. So if you're familiar with ServiceNow, we're a SaaS-based platform, right? So you don't go through the whole procurement processes and things like that of getting infrastructure. And this also talks about the security of the ServiceNow platform too. If AMP is allowing vulnerability data and security incident data to be in the cloud locally here in Australia, then there's something to be said about our security, all right?
And the other thing with that, Brian, is the data centers are here in Australia, so AMP's data never leaves the shores of Australia.
Yep.
It's all here. And within the ServiceNow application, there is, unless you're on the security team and you have it's all based on roles, unless you have that role, you don't even know that the security incident application exists. So there's really just an amazing amount of security within the ServiceNow platform that allows this critical data. You have to imagine the data that's coming into ServiceNow, and so the criticality and the security wrapped around who can see and who can do, who can see the data and who can do anything with that data.
Yeah, one thing to add, I'm sorry, yes,
No,
one
go
thing to
ahead.
add to that with respect to the security. So I said it's a scoped app. There's a ring fence around it. Data, certain pieces of data from vulnerabilities and security incidents can't be seen from other people within the platform. That's actually quite important. Yeah, so.
All right. And one of the other things in the configuration, we also built them 8 service catalog items. So they had previously gone live with the service catalog. And how many of you within your organizations, if you had a phishing email come in, actually know what to do with that? I mean, you're all security folks, so right, you know. But if I was talking to a group of just normal users out there in your organizations, at KPMG, I just got a phishing email asking for all kinds of information. And I went, what do I even do with this? I don't even know who to send it to. I don't know, clearly I don't want to open it and click on the links. I have enough smarts not to do that. But think of the other folks that haven't been in Black Ops for the last 30 years that would just start clicking through. My dad, for example. Right, so we built them on top of their service catalog. We put in 8 security incident catalog items. So if they get a phishing email, they can attach the email to a service catalog request, send it off. It goes right to the security incident team. They have the email, they have the data, they have who it came from, who it came to, when it was sent, and they can start doing that investigation right away to make sure that they don't have any kind of, in the last session, that worms or any kind of malware that's released through emails or phishing attacks.
Another example, of course, is how many developers you have in your organization. You just want to run a vulnerability scan on basically the service that they're going to actually start creating an app with. It's so via the service catalog, you click on a link, you put in the IP range, and then because of the integrations we have with Qualys and Tenable and other folks like that, it'll execute that vulnerability scan, and the result will come back, and basically the developer's on his way or her way.
Absolutely. And we're actually doing that at AMP right now. We're on a phase 2 of security operations, and that's actually one of the components that we're doing for them to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So really just, we've kind of touched on this, but just 60% response and vulnerability response time, months to minutes. So 3 months they've gotten down to 1 day. And they do want to take that down to even minutes to be able to do that. And again, that comes with more automation, more learning, more maybe integrations. We're doing an integration to Qualys next. And then 3 times faster. Security incident response comes in, they know about it, there's workflow behind it, the right people are notified, the right people are able to immediately react and respond to the security incidents that are taking place. And then the top takeaways. Documented processes are really important. So if you don't have your security operations processes documented, I would definitely say that is a starting point to be able to get your operations up and running. It also identifies gaps, and it helps if you have a partner come in, an implementation partner, they can then help you understand where you are and where the potential opportunities are for making things operate a little more efficiently. Your CMDB, it is absolutely a critical component, but if you have, as Brian said, a shitty CMDB, it's all right. What has happened is with AMP is actually implementing and updating the CMDB because of security incident response and security incidents that's coming in. So they're actually enhancing the CMDB through security operations out of the cybersecurity team. That's something you don't hear about quite often.
Which is a benefit, of course, to IT.
Absolutely. And then start with the basics. Don't try to boil the ocean. Don't try and solve world hunger all at once. Understand from the processes What are you trying to resolve? Go in and do it incrementally because you get those incremental values, you get the incremental benefits, and still are enhancing the capabilities within your organization.
Okay, with that, we thank you very much. And if you want any more additional information, come by for a demonstration. We're located all the way at the other end. You know where the main ballroom? Do you know where the main ballroom is? Basically, we're right outside the main ballroom, all the way to the end. We'd love to have a conversation with you, give you a demonstration. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We've got a couple of minutes of questions if anybody has any. I've got one quick question.
Sure.
You said that the platform's a scoped app. What are the boundaries in terms of data boundaries and also entire segregation between different clients of that of the scoped app?
Well, first of all, if you have an instance of ServiceNow, you're separated from everybody else, other organizations. The other thing is that with the data, there's the actual data model that's separate from the actual main data model within the ServiceNow platform. So there's separate tables that are associated.
So by segregation, do you mean the front-end component that each large client uses is on entirely different virtual infrastructure, or is it within the same part of the platform?
It's a part of the same platform. Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you all for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Take care.
On behalf of AusCERT, I'd just like to thank our speakers.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Don't forget to rate this presentation through the conference app and enjoy lunch. The next session starts at, 1:20.